Oh, Andrew, don't be such a bore. It's just a little party. Sarah won't mind. She never does. A laugh. Familiar tinkling, but laced with an intimacy that turned the stomach. You said the same thing about the St. T's? Tropez trip, and she didn't speak to you for a month. The second voice was gruffer, posher, tinged with a whine of self-pity. Prince Andrew, that's because you were stupid enough to get photographed. This is different. This is just us. And the girls from the yacht club. It'll be fun. In a soundproof studio at Global Radio's London headquarters, Piers Morgan let the silence hang in the air for a full 10 seconds, his eyes locked on the camera. The producer's voice in his ear counted down, 3, 2, 1. And there you have it, Morgan said, his tone low, grave, and dripping with theatrical revelation. The voice of Meghan Markle, not the Duchess of Sussex, not the feminist icon, but a woman intimately orchestrating a little party with Prince Andrew, while casually dismissing his wife, Sarah Ferguson. This audio, ladies and gentlemen, is one of several tapes provided to me by the Duchess of York herself. Tapes she has kept hidden for over a decade. Tapes that don't just expose a secret friendship, they expose a secret life. In Montecito, California, Prince Harry's world dissolved from a state of solid matter into a dizzying, nauseating vapor. He was standing in his kitchen, phone in hand, watching the live stream. The ceramic mug he'd been holding shattered on the terracotta tiles, a burst of brown liquid spreading like a stain. He didn't feel it. All he felt was the seismic lurch of his own history tearing in two. The audio kept playing and clipped, devastating segments through Morgan's broadcast. Do you think Harry will ever find out about all this? Andrew's voice tinny through the recording. A playful, dismissive sigh from Meghan. Find out what? That we're friends? That I had a life before him? Don't be paranoid, Andy. It's ancient history. Buried. Buried! The word echoed in Harry's skull. He remembered their long talks before the wedding, his earnest desire to know her, to understand the journey that led her to him. She had spoken of struggles, of loneliness, of fighting for her career. She had spoken of past relationships, framed as learning experiences. She had never, not once in any midnight confession, mentioned Prince Andrew. Not as a friend, not as an acquaintance, not as a footnote. This wasn't a footnote. The casual use of Andy, the conspiratorial tone, the reference to a St. Tropez trip, and yacht club girls. This was the language of a shared, secret history. This was the sound of a door swinging open on a past he'd never even glimpsed. His phone began to vibrate, a frantic, skittering dance on the countertop. Unknown numbers. Blocked IDs. The palace switchboard. He ignored them all, his eyes glued to the screen as Morgan produced a visual grainy, time-stamped photo from what looked like a nightclub VIP section. A younger Meghan, head thrown back in laughter, next to a visibly younger Andrew. His arm was loosely around the back of her booth. The date in the corner, June 2012. For their first meeting. 4 years of a buried friendship with the man who would become the most toxic, repudiated member of his family. A man Harry had publicly condemned, had forced the Queen to strip of duties, had referred to in spare as a constant source of shame and embarrassment. The betrayal was a multi-headed monster. First, the live omission. Second, the sheer grotesque judgment of being so close to Andrew. Third, and most chillingly, the performance. The exquisite, Oscar-worthy performance of the wide-eyed innocent entering the snake pit of the royal family, unaware of its dark corners, all while having shared private jokes with its most notorious serpent. Why is Sarah Ferguson doing this now? Morgan was asking the camera, voicing the question on millions of screens. According to the Duchess of York, it's not about revenge. It's about truth. She claims she tried, privately and repeatedly, to warn both Harry and Meghan that this secret would surface, that it was a landmine waiting to detonate under their carefully constructed fairy tale. She was ignored, dismissed as jealous. So now, she is press play. The broadcast cut to a pre-recorded snippet of Sarah, looking uncharacteristically solemn in her Windsor home. I kept these tapes for one reason only: protection. Not for me, for my daughters, to prove, if I ever needed to, that the narrative being spun was false. I have watched for years as a myth was built a myth that painted one person as a perpetual victim and my family as monsters. Enough is enough. I will not let history be rewritten. Let the tapes speak. Back live, Morgan leaned in. And speak they do. The next clip we're about to play is darker. It moves from social gossip into something far more serious. It involves not just Andrew, but a name we have become all too familiar with. A name that, until this moment, has never been uttered in the same breath as Meghan Markle. He paused, a master of suspense. Jeffrey Epstein. Harry's blood turned to ice. His breath hitched. No. It was impossible. This was a bridge too far, even for the tabloids. This was, the audio hissed, then cleared. Andrew's voice agitated. Jeffrey is getting impatient. He says you're being difficult about the New York trip. Meghan's voice, colder now, dismissive. I'm not being difficult. I'm being smart. That scene is getting too hot. The photographers are starting to recognize me from the show. I told you I need to pivot. Cleaner circles. Andrew, he won't like it. He introduced you to everyone. A short, sharp laugh from Meghan. He introduced me to you, Andy. The rest was just networking. The silence in Harry's kitchen was absolute. The only sound was the white noise roar of his own shock. The word networking seemed to hang in the air. A spider suspended on a thread of implication. He introduced me to you. The sentence was a key turning in a lock, opening a door to a corridor Harry never wanted to walk down. This wasn't just about a hidden friendship with his disgraced uncle. This was a tape suggesting his wife had been, in some transactional capacity, introduced to Prince Andrew by Jeffrey Epstein himself, and that she had been part of a scene she needed to pivot away from as her career advanced. Every instinct, every cell in his body that had been trained to defend her, to attack her critics, to blame the institution, short-circuited. You couldn't blame the firm for this audio. You couldn't blame racism. You couldn't blame press intrusion. This was a recording, a time-stamped, voice-verified artifact from a past she had systematically erased. He slowly turned his head and looked down the sun-drenched hallway toward her office, where she had been working all morning, oblivious. The woman behind that door was a stranger. The tapes had not exposed her past. They had exposed his present as a magnificent, beautiful, heartbreaking lie. The archives, as Sarah Ferguson would later call them in a sworn affidavit, were not kept in a digital cloud or a safe deposit box. They were physical, tactile relics of a past she had meticulously preserved out of a sense of impending doom. In a locked, fireproof case at Royal Lodge, alongside childhood mementos of Beatrice and Eugenie, sat 3 items that would now unravel a kingdom: a microcassette recorder, a stack of handwritten letters bound in lavender ribbon, and a leather-bound driver's log. Piers Morgan's broadcast was just the primer. The real detonation came 48 hours later, when Sarah's legal team, flanked by a former MI5 forensic audio specialist, held an unprecedented press conference at the Cavendish Hotel. It was not a salacious tell-all, it was a clinical, evidential presentation. They weren't selling a story. They were presenting a case. The first piece entered into the public record was letter number 7, dated August 2013. A photograph of the handwritten note was projected onto a large screen. The handwriting was looping, confident, unmistakably Meghan's pre-royal script. Dearest Andy, St. Cloe. Tropes was pure magic. Even with the Sarah situation, don't worry, your secret's safe with me. The photos from the lower deck never surfaced, did they? Thank you again for the introduction to the Rothschilds party next month. You're a true guardian angel. Remember what I said? You have to be smarter than the room. Always, the forensic specialist, a man with the demeanor of a coroner, pointed to the analysis. The paper, the ink, the postmark from Los Angeles, all consistent with 2013. The handwriting has been compared to authenticated samples from Ms. Markle's 2014 correspondence with the U.S. talent agency. The probability of forgery is statistically negligible. The phrase guardian angel aimed at Andrew seemed to suck the air out of the global news cycle, but it was the next piece of evidence that shifted the scandal from social to criminal adjacency. The driver's log was opened to a series of entries spanning 2011 to 2015. Neat. Block printing recorded pickups and drop-offs for the Duke of York. Highlighted in yellow were 6 entries where the passenger pickup column read, Ms. Visamis, Markle, Soho House. The destinations varied: a private airfield in Farnborough, a discreet Chelsea townhouse, Royal Lodge itself. One entry, dated July 2014, was annotated. 2 a.m. collection from Bougies nightclub. Destination, Epstein residence, Belgravia. Passengers distressed. Distressed. The word was a Rorschach blot, inviting the world to paint its own terrible picture. Sarah's lawyer, a woman in a severe black suit, stated flatly, "The Duchess of York came into possession of this log in 2019 from a former employee of the Duke's household. She recognized its significance as a contemporaneous record of movements that directly contradict Miss Markle's repeated assertions that she had no meaningful relationship with Prince Andrew prior to 2016, but it was the final piece of audio, played in that hushed hotel conference room, that moved the story from betrayal into something resembling horror," the tape hissed. The quality was poorer, filled with the muffled sounds of a party clinking glasses, distant laughter. Andrew's voice, slurry with drink. "He wants to know if he'll do the Virgin Islands again. The big house this time." Meghan's voice, sharp, clear, "No, absolutely not. I'm done with the islands. That chapter is closed. Andrew, he won't like it. You know what he's like when he's disappointed." A long pause, the rustle of fabric, then Meghan's voice lower, deadly serious. "Then you tell him for me. You tell Jeffrey Epstein that Meghan Markle is not one of his girls. Not anymore. My price has gone up. Way up. And what I'm building now is permanent." The silence in the press room was physical. Dozens of seasoned journalists sat frozen, their pens still on their notebooks. The sentence hung in the air, atomizing every previous narrative. Not one of his girls. Not anymore. It was an admission of past inclusion, a declaration of severed ties, a statement of cold, hard transactional evolution. My price has gone up. In Montecito, Harry had withdrawn into a guest house on the property. He had not spoken to Meghan since the first broadcast. His team, his few remaining loyalists, were now acting as a buffer, a human firewall between the prince and the princess. They brought him printouts, tablet screens glowing with the latest headlines. He read Meghan's statement released by her frantic PR team. It was a masterpiece of legalistic evasion. "I categorically deny any wrongdoing or inappropriate relationship. These edited, decades-old private conversations, recorded without my consent, are being maliciously weaponized to distort a period of my youth when I was navigating professional life as a single woman. I am deeply sorry for any pain caused to my husband and family." It denied nothing specific. It called the tapes edited but did not challenge their authenticity. It apologized for pain, but not for the content. It was the statement of someone trapped by truth. Harry's mind became a torture chamber of connecting dots. The pivot she spoke of on the tape, the move into cleaner circles, was that him? Was Prince Harry, the sixth in line to the throne, the ultimate clean circle? Was his love, their fairy tale romance, the strategic, permanent thing she was building after her price went up? The foundation of their entire story, a blind date set up by a mutual friend. A chance encounter, love at first sight now seemed like a meticulously constructed facade over a much darker, more calculating reality. Had she been aiming for the royal family all along, using Andrew as her initial point of entry? Was the racist institution narrative not just a defense, but a preemptive smokescreen for any scrutiny of her own past? His phone buzzed. It was a message from a cousin, one of the few who had stayed sympathetic. "I'm so sorry, but you need to know, the palace is in lockdown over this. There's talk of a succession review regarding your children's titles. They see this as an existential contamination. They will move to legally separate you from her to protect the lineage. You need to get on a plane, now." It was no longer about his heart. It was about his children's place in history. The tapes had not just exposed Meghan's past, they had poisoned his children's future. He stood up, looking out the window at the main house. She was in there, the architect of this ruin, the woman whose voice on those tapes was a stranger's. The love of his life, who may have seen him not as a soulmate, but as the ultimate career achievement. The most stunning, devastating realization washed over him. He could never listen to her voice again without hearing the tapes. The trust was not broken. It was annihilated. Every tender memory was now retroactively infected with the cold, calculating tone of, "My price has gone up." Harry was no longer stunned. He was bereft. He was standing in the ashes of a love story that had never truly existed. The statement from Prince Harry came not from a palace, but from a lawyer's office in Los Angeles. It was 3 sentences long, It made no mention of love, of marriage, or of a future. It was a legal and emotional severance. I can confirm that I have commenced legal proceedings for the dissolution of my marriage. My sole focus is the welfare and protection of my children. There will be no further comment. The word dissolution was telling, not a romantic separation or a hopeful time apart. A dissolution, the act of formally ending an entity, of making it cease to exist. That was what he had chosen. To unmake them, he had not seen her, not once before filing. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful plea for explanation. The tapes had been the explanation. The cold, unarguable evidence of a foundational lie rendered any conversation pointless. What could she say? That the voice wasn't hers? Forensic experts had already verified it, that the words were taken out of context. The context, Andrew Epstein, my price, was the entire horror. He executed the separation with the precision of a military retreat. His team, now entirely separate from hers, coordinated with Buckingham Palace in a chillingly efficient joint operation. Archie and Lilibet were collected from Montecito by a security detail answerable only to the King's private office, flown to the UK and installed at Balmoral under the care of trusted, vetted staff. Harry followed hours later on a separate flight. The children were now situated on sovereign soil under the full legal and protective umbrella of the Crown. It was a fortress Meghan could not penetrate. He had abandoned her, not with a shout, but with a silence more absolute than any prison. He abandoned her to the unspooling consequences she had set in motion a decade ago. Netflix issued a terse, one-line termination of all projects. Spotify, which had already parted ways, now publicly reaffirmed the conclusion of their partnership. The charity commissions in the US and UK announced routine reviews of Arkawell's financials and governance. A death sentence by bureaucracy. The world's sympathy, once so potent a weapon for her, now flowed exclusively to Harry. He was recast from a traitorous son into a tragic, duped figure prince, charming who had fallen for a wolf in couture clothing. The narrative Sarah Ferguson promised had solidified. Harry was the ultimate victim of the deception. In the sterile quiet of a Balmoral drawing room, Harry finally allowed himself to listen to one of the tapes in full, provided by the palace's own investigators. He heard the laughter, the casual cruelty towards Sarah, the transactional bargaining with Andrew. He listened to the woman he loved refer to a period of her life that included him as the thing she was building. He played the clip of her saying, "My price has gone up 5 times. Each time, a piece of the man he had been while loving her vanished. This was his reckoning, not with Meghan, but with his own reflection. The spare who had so desperately wanted to be the hero of his own story had, in the end, been the most valuable pawn in someone else's. The fairy tale was not just over, it was exposed as a grim, premeditated business plan. He looked out at the Scottish mist shrouding the hills. His children were safe, asleep in another wing. His title, his lineage, his place, however fractured, was secured. He had saved what could be saved from the wreckage by performing the most brutal act of his life, walking away without a backward glance. Meghan Markle was now alone with the echoes of her own past, playing on a relentless global loop. Prince Harry, meanwhile, was finally, terribly free. The tapes had not just exposed her secret past, they had executed his naive heart, and in doing so, liberated him from a beautiful, perfect lie.